Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the podcast. If you would like to support the show, please go to convome.com/support and you can buy me a coffee. All funds go to support the podcast and everything that goes into producing it. Thank you. My guest this week is Julie Berninger of Gold City Ventures, and I am shocked that I have not had her on the podcast before now. Julie, thank you so much for being my guest and welcome to the podcast. And I'll explain why I'm shocked. I just told you, but I'll explain for people listening who don't understand why.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. Now, before we jump into our conversation, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what is Gold City Ventures?
Sure. So I am a toddler mom that lives in New England.
Congrats.
And thank you. And on my free time, I guess the past couple of years, I've been building an Etsy shop and an Etsy business. My business partner, Cody Berman, and I founded Gold City Ventures, and we are focused on helping people sell printables on Etsy. We focus on how to make them in Canva and how to use keyword research and other strategies to make sure that they sell. And since 2019, we've taken thousands of students through the course. We've grown it to be not just our voices, but other former students have come on board the team. And now I think we're a team of 8 or 10 people. Yeah. And it's been a blast ever since.
Yeah, congratulations on that. And I know there are some things about your course that are different, and we'll talk about those things. How did you first discover Etsy, and why did you feel like Etsy was a place that you could actually build a viable business on?
I came to Etsy from the side hustle perspective. So my husband and I woke up one day in 2016 and realized that we were in 6 figures of debt. And I don't know how we sort of let it get that bad, but between student loans and car loans and all these other things, we had somehow got ourselves to that point. But we were lucky enough, we had good jobs and we were able to kind of career hack. So we moved to California and our primary goal was, let's pay off all this debt and let's save as much as possible that we can. So on that journey, I discovered the Financial Independence Retire Early movement. It's called FIRE. I don't know if anyone has heard of this, but it's a group of people that want to essentially walk away from their traditional corporate jobs in their 30s or 40s or anywhere before the traditional retirement age of 65 in the US. And I was obsessed with this idea at that time. And even though I already was doing well in my day job, I wanted to kind of speed up the process to retirement. And it seems kind of silly now because I've since found something that I love and I'm passionate about. But at the time, I was absolutely like, okay, get me out of here. I appreciate what I have, but I don't see myself sort of sitting in an office forever. I want my flexibility. I want to travel. I have all these hobbies that excite me, and spending that much time focused on one thing that's not my passion is something that I'm trying to avoid, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's when I discovered Etsy. And I actually listened to your podcast back in 2016 on my lunch breaks. And I was trying to think of ways that I could create something to sell that would allow me to bring in a little extra income. And even just a couple $100s a month was sort of my goal. And I could snowball that into something bigger over time. Yeah. So I started that back in 2016 and it's sort of become what it is today.
That's unbelievable. I mean, of course I believe it, but it's amazing that it's grown to what it is. So initially you started off with your Etsy store. How did you segue into teaching other people? And did you have any concerns about sharing what you had learned that you'd found success with?
So my Etsy shop is the Swag Elephant. It's kind of a goofy name, but I think all of us just have a hard time picking the name.
We just pick those names and we run with them.
Yeah.
I like the Swag Elephant though.
Thank you. I started out selling temporary tattoos for bachelorette parties. And at the time I was going to tons of bachelorettes, just being in my 20s. I'm in my 30s now.
Yeah.
And I knew that this was a great thing to sell on Etsy. People were spending lots of money. They were buying in large quantities. Like if you attend a bachelorette party, you're attending it with a dozen or so other people. So you would typically make a good amount on the sale. And I was living in a tiny apartment in California and I wanted something that was easy to store. So the tattoos were kind of the perfect thing for me to sell. But with having a busy day job and all of that, I the mental load of having to check the app every day, it just seemed like a chore, I guess, to me after a while. And I didn't like when I had to commit to the designs up front. And I made a lot of mistakes on what designs were going to be popular. I think I invested, it wasn't that much, maybe a couple $100, maybe $500-$600 to invest in the tattoos up front. But I still have thousands of bachelorette tattoos with raunchy sayings that are in a box somewhere in my house because they just never sold. So if anyone's ever going to a bachelorette party, I have you covered. But I just was sort of, I guess I wasn't a crafty person coming into the Etsy shop world. So there was nothing in my heart that was speaking to me to make. I was really doing it because I wanted the income potential. So around at the same time, I had started a podcast about financial independence, retire early. And I interviewed over 200 people over the course of a couple of years about how they achieved financial independence. And I found people that they were selling things on Amazon from a boat off the coast of Iceland, or people that were living in a van. I mean, I found some really interesting people and how they did it. And one of the people that I found was this woman, Laura from iHeart Planners, and she was making six figures selling digital products on Etsy and her own website. And that kind of lit a light bulb moment for me where I was saying, oh, I don't have to be doing physical products. I could do digital products on Etsy. I could do digital bachelorette party products. And then that was sort of the start of transitioning my shop to be a printables focused shop.
Wow, that's amazing. And then when you started the course, how did you find your business partner to do this with?
So my business partner was someone that I actually interviewed on the podcast, and he was also seeking financial independence. And he was a little bit younger than me, but we found out through the chat before the podcast that we had went to college in the same town. So we had that in common. And he was a side hustler that was sort of an expert in freelance work. And he was able to leave his corporate job by freelancing for online entrepreneurs. And then he had a blog like me, and then I had a blog, and then I was doing the Etsy stuff. So we came together and said, okay, let's launch a series of side hustle courses where we help people create their own online business income streams to help them essentially kickstart their financial independence journey. And since we both had podcasts, we had interested people that were listening that they had heard some of the guests that we brought on that have already done these side hustles too. And they were curious about starting them themselves. So that's really how it started. And we never worried about, okay, well, if I share my shop name or anything like that, we'd get copycats. And I know that is definitely a very real thing. But for us, these are our side hustles. And it's not our full-time job that we're selling on Etsy. So I totally understand why if someone was a full-time Etsy seller, they would not want to share their shop in this venue. Because at this point, we have had thousands of people, and everyone that's listening to your podcast can go to the Swag Elephant and see what I'm selling. But I do really believe that abundance mentality is the way to succeed in online business. And you do have to be a little bit creative when you are so public with your shop name. So I've had to get ahead of the keyword trends because I have shared mine so widely. But if you do understand them and you understand seasonality and what shoppers are looking for on Etsy, then I think you're going to be okay. And maybe if one particular product becomes overdone, then you know what to look for the next product. And in a digital product, you can pivot so fast. In a physical product, you might need to get more materials and think differently about what you're going to offer. Whereas in digital, it's like, oh, okay, well, this product is not selling as well, so I'm going to create a new one this weekend. And you can slightly edit the old one and kind of pick up much more quickly.
So you mentioned using keyword research to find good products to sell. What's your not so secret sauce for using keyword research? Because I think one of the I guess I'll call it a mistake or the path that many sellers take is to make something that they either know how to make or they like and they think everybody else will like it. But many of us can attest to the fact that that's not always the case. You know, like you, I have a stash of stuff that I knew the world was going to want to buy on Etsy, and they didn't necessarily. I think Etsy sellers should one day have a flash sale of things that we just have lying around that either we gave up on or didn't move. but back to the question was, what keyword strategies do you, and without necessarily giving away everything that you share in the course, but do you teach to help sellers pick products that will be winners?
Absolutely. And because we're coming from that personal finance space, it's all about this. But I will say for every seller, while every seller wants to make a lot of money, this sort of game of trying to pick the best product that has the highest potential isn't going to be as important to everyone. So for example, when I had the podcast, I had a co-host that makes beautiful stained glass pieces. And for people's weddings, she would make the Harry Potter keys and these beautiful things. So when we started getting into Printable, she did as well. And she made stained glass patterns. That is not going to probably sell as well as something in the bachelorette party niche, just because the amount of search volume for bachelorette is just so much higher. But it's in her heart that she loves doing this, and this is a side hustle for her, and that makes her happy. She doesn't want to necessarily kind of game the system and figure out what customers are looking for and change her product line for that. Whereas for me, and sort of the method that Cody and I teach, because a lot of the people that end up gravitating to Gold City Ventures, they want to do this as a side hustle, and profit is important to them, and they're not necessarily coming with a personal passion. Then there's sort of three sort of things that we can have them focus on that helps them get ahead on Etsy. So the first thing is understanding seasonality and when customers shop on Etsy. So we call this the seasonal product secret, but I know this just from being a shopper on Etsy. I think of Etsy when I'm giving gifts. I think of Etsy when I'm trying to celebrate certain occasions, whether I'm decorating my house or whether I'm gifting things to other people for those occasions, holidays, events, special milestones in people's life. And if you think about when you're listing a product on Etsy, you are selecting whether it's a holiday, whether it's an occasion, is it a bar mitzvah, is it a confirmation? You're kind of making those selections, and Etsy gives you maybe a 10, or I forget exactly how many, but Etsy is encouraging you to sort of create things to celebrate those special milestones. So if you are an Etsy seller and you want to sell more, then trying to fit within that seasonal calendar year thought process when you're picking your products is really important. So that's the first one I would say.
Okay. Do you use or recommend any particular tools, or do you strictly stick to what Etsy shares, as far as in the search bar and in their, there's a guide they sell out, the name is escaping me right now, but what are your thoughts on that?
So we use all of the things, and myself included. Keyword research and data is something that I absolutely love. It doesn't come naturally to everyone, but it's something that you can learn. Don't be afraid of it. And tools like eRank will become your favorite pastime. I love just spending an hour or two in eRank and seeing what's trending. That's one of my favorite tools. You can also use free tools like Google Trends, but doing that consistently over the course of a year and understanding what's trending for different holidays and events, that can really inform your product choices on Etsy. And you can't really do this with a tool, but just paying attention to current events. So in 2020, with everything going down with the pandemic, and people were changing how they shopped, people were changing how they were celebrating those milestone events. If you are paying attention, there's no keywords research tool that's going to necessarily help you understand what's unfolding in real time. But if you are paying attention in the Facebook groups that you're in, when you're talking to your other kids, friends, moms, or whatever, if you're in that stage of life or anything like that, you can get ideas of what currently is trending. So an example of this, in Halloween, depending on where you lived, some people were not doing trick or treat with their kids. They were putting out pre-packaged candy bags, and they were putting them on tables in front of their house so everyone could kind of pick their own and they weren't sticking their hands in the candy bowl. Now, if you were someone that was paying attention and prepared to that, and you understood what was kind of happening, then you could create a printable to put on that candy bag, and you would probably do really well. But that's not something that you're going to find in a keyword search tool. So those are the kind of things that we like to focus on at Gold City Ventures. And it's just trying to be smart about product selection so that you don't waste your time. Because I know in my current situation of life, I don't have tons of time at all since becoming a mom. And there's nothing worse to me than like wasting my time or wasting someone's time. And even though it's totally fun to make printables and it can be a relaxing escape for me if I do get that time on my computer, I want to make sure that I'm going to make a profit from that time. And by being smart ahead of time, I can better ensure that.
Julie, it's so funny you say that because I was one of those ones who did the bags at Halloween exactly for that. And it never even occurred to me to create a printable for that, and just to make it fun, because I was just thinking safety first, like, let's bag these things up, let's put them in a table, let's put them outside, nobody come in. But it's nice to, I guess, good to know that as far as what you're offering, you and the team behind that thinks ahead in this way, for people like me who don't think that way, who are just like, okay, I'm just going to do the thing, but don't really stop to think, well, how can I make this more profitable?
Yeah, I mean, we really enjoy that. And I think the more that you think about printables, and I'm using the word printables, but we really mean any digital download. So
Mm-hmm.
I sell some templates. I sell things that people only plan to use on the computer. They'll never print them, but we kind of put it under the generic term printable.
Yeah.
But once you start thinking about it, then you'll see printables in the wild everywhere. So for example, this year for my toddlers kind of preschool prep class,
Mm-hmm.
on Valentine's Day, all of the parents brought their kids in with Valentine's. And if it was back when I was a kid, I think my mom would pick up some at the convenience store or something for me. But now the parents are all going on Etsy and they're printing out the Valentines for their kids. And that's a digital file that somebody made. And it's not that hard to make. But if you are understanding that, oh, this is a thing, like it's a thing on
Yeah.
Valentine's Day for kids to toddlers to give out cards,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to sort of be better prepared to put your printables in the best chance to sell.
Yeah. One of the things that I've seen around the Etsy ecosphere when it comes to printables, and you've probably seen this too, is a lot of sellers sell their products at very low prices. How do you teach people? Because I've read, I've talked to some of your previous students who, have either made this a full-time gig, gotten out of debt. You did the same. How do you teach people to price their products for profitability so that, yes, it's passive, but earning $1 passively is very different from earning 15 or 20 passively and hitting goals?
This is one of my favorite topics, and I'm so glad that you asked this because it really depends on the goals of the seller. So let's say that you are a massage therapist and you have an online course about massage therapy or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't care necessarily that you want to make as much money in your shop. You want to get maybe leads. So if you sell
Mm.
$3,000 products, that's going to be better for you than, and you can find ways to kind of email your customers after. That's a whole nother topic we could get into a different time. But if you're someone that's just thinking of the Etsy shop as a side hustle, then, and you're not going for a volume play, then you're going to think it's extremely important to make as much money per order as you can.
Mm-hmm.
So some people like to use Etsy's sale features like the coupons and buy two get one free and all those things to kind of increase or order size,
Yeah.
so you don't have to worry as much about having lower dollar value products.
Mm-hmm.
But then other people like myself, I like to just find products up front that I can charge more for. So I think the most I've ever made was $32 on one item, which was a bundle. But you can, I mean, a lot of my products are in like the $9 to $12 range, and people will buy
Yeah.
them if you find a product that they really need that hasn't been totally exposed yet. Because I think over time, kind of maybe the products get a little cheaper. But there are those unicorns out there, and it does take a while to get good and knowing how to find those.
Yeah.
And it's okay at the beginning if you don't, because this is like anything where it's practice makes perfect. And at the beginning, if you're getting discouraged, like, oh, I have to find a product I can sell for
Mm-hmm.
$14, that's going to be really difficult. I think at the beginning it's just learning how to use the tools and getting used to creating products and
Mm-hmm.
understanding the slight tech of how to upload them to Etsy and how to help customers when they have tech issues. That's sort of the obstacles to kind of overcome. And then you can focus on, okay, how do I increase average order size, which is going to make me more money?
Yeah.
And sort of the less customers you have, this sounds bad, but the less customer service you have to do, because I'm doing this as a passive income, quote unquote, side hustle. I don't want to be messaging customers all the time at all. So I try to come up with ways to avoid that, whether providing better instructions or just maybe making products that are more expensive so I can make more money without having to deal with as many customers.
Yeah. Another thing that I think about, which doesn't apply only to printable sellers, but everyone on Etsy, is sometimes products run their course. They have, like you mentioned, this seasonality to some things, and sometimes just certain product lines stop being a hit, regardless of season. How do you decide when it's time to end a product line, or when a trend is oversaturated and it becomes a race to the bottom for the prices?
I think the cool thing about when you sell printables, there's not as much of a cost of pivoting. Mm-hmm. And that's what really is nice about it. And myself, so I kind of do a top up of my Etsy shop usually in January of every year. And then I watch how my revenue changes over time. And if it starts to dip one month, then I know, okay, well, I'll keep an eye on it, see if it's just something seasonal. And then if it's a couple months and it starts to dip, then I'll say, okay, I need to add some new products and look at some of my previous bestsellers and figure out sort of what's going on with them. And I kind of go in and figure out what my next steps are. But I think in the printable space, it's not necessarily the same thing. Like if something loses its steam, then you can just do more research on it and see maybe my stuff is just not as competitive. Like, for example, you had Sasha on, who was one of our former students. Mm-hmm. She's great. She is an expert in creating fillable PDFs, and they do calculations and all these cool things. Yeah. Well, a lot of people, including myself, we were selling printable planners and PDF things that were just print only. But at a certain point, that's just not competitive anymore. I mean, people, they want the option to type on their computer or their phones. They don't want to be printing and writing always. Yeah. So when I didn't offer the fillable component of it, my stuff started to lose its steam. Mm-hmm. So in that case, I didn't have to pivot. I just had to add an extra feature to the actual product itself. And then I was able to kind of get that product back selling. So it kind of depends on what's going on.
Okay. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now, I want to ask you a question that is maybe a little tougher. You know that there are many courses out there, and particularly with printables, because I think at this point, many sellers have clued into the idea that printables are a good niche to get into if you can do it right. And so with that, more courses are out there that teach how to sell printables. What's different about the ePrintables course from most of the other ones out there?
I think the group of Etsy sellers with courses are just such a nice bunch of people. So you can't go wrong with anyone. But what definitely differentiates Gold City Ventures is that you are getting a collection of sellers. And that was something that was really important to Cody and I from the beginning. So we're two podcasting friends that had totally different approaches to our shops. Cody was actually the seasonal seller, and I was that evergreen seller, kind of trying to focus on the more expensive products. And since we started the course in 2019, we've now seen thousands of people go through. And we have this component where if you reach 100 sales on Etsy with printables with us, then you will essentially have our membership included for free indefinitely. So because of that, some of our students that were doing really well, and we've had people that have full-time incomes now from Etsy, which just blows my mind because we were doing this as side hustles. Yeah. They're still there. And as the course has grown, and myself, just my stage of life, I'm still in that young kid stage of life. I got a nanny in the last year, and that's been a game changer. And I did leave my corporate job, but for a while I was doing all the things. I really needed all the help I could get. So we were hiring a lot of these students and who were doing really well on Etsy, having thousands of sales themselves. So now Gold City Ventures is not just me and Cody. I mean, we have a team of 8 or 10 that are selling on Etsy, and we're all kind of selling in our own niches in our own ways. And that's, I think, what is different about Gold City Ventures, because a lot of the courses, it's just sort of about that one person that is the guru. Yeah. But Gold City Ventures is a company that has lots of people that are contributing their own spin on it. And it's not just coming from Cody and I, sort of what the top things are to do. So that makes it fun for us to kind of do what we do every day, because we're working with these really smart, creative, fun sellers to help people do the best they can on Etsy. But it's not just us.
Typically, how long, and I know everyone is different, how long do you encourage people to give their shops and their products a chance before they give up, if even?
Not giving up is absolutely the hardest thing. And that's why we do the things like offer the 100 Sales Club, where you get a gift in the mail. We have a tumbler with your name on it, and people like reaching that. It's like a big thing that we celebrate in the group. But I would say that the tough thing is the time can be really individual. So we've seen people that they make sales in their first week and they're hitting 100 sales right after 30 days. And it's like, wow, that person's really zooming. And then we have other people that will take them 4 or 5 months to get to like 20 sales. And the funny thing is that there's this one woman, Lisa, she actually became a full-time seller. She sells digital greeting cards. And then recently she bought a commercial quality printer and she prints her greeting cards as well. And she was one of the ones that took 4 or 5 months to make a couple sales. And she has shared in the group before that she was kind of discouraged by that, but now she's been doing one of the best students. Making a full-time income from selling digital products is so cool. Congrats to her on that. But it really, I would say, I hope people that it's taking them a little longer not to get discouraged, because everyone has their own individual journey. And sometimes it just takes a while for everything to click, kind of the keyword research, the execution, and the design, all of that kind of comes together. And that's why we do like having the group, because we can sort of figure out what exactly the issue is with everybody. So we have a graphic designer on staff that she does office hours every month, and you can submit your shop and she'll tell you from the graphic design perspective what can be improved. We have people that are experts in E-rank and keyword research who can help you if that is something that you have concerns with. And bringing together the group of experts is sometimes what people need, because it's not necessarily everyone has the same issues. Everyone struggles with different things, and it's very individual when in terms of how they're going to reach success and when.
Good to know. Yeah. How often is the core course updated?
So we update it multiple times per year. We just did a big update in March, and then Canva the next day released some new features.
So I know when that happened.
Yes, it's just with tech companies, when you're dependent on them, you just never know when they're going to release something, because they're not going to share it with the public first, obviously. But we love Canva so much. I mean, every new feature we're super excited about, but we're always updating the course, and it's important to us to stay connected. And actually, that's what I love about having the team now, because I will see different things that have changed or different rules and things. And then I have sort of the feelers through the other people that work for Gold City Ventures of, hey, look at this new thing, or look at this change, or I'm trying this in my shop and this is working for me now. And it's kind of, we can have more of a conversation about it. So we're always keeping the course updated, because we want students to achieve success. And if we see that students are not reaching 100 sales within the pace that they usually do or anything like that, then we'll say, hey, what's going on here? And we can kind of go step in and, interject and change things, because that's the most important thing to us. I mean, for me, leaving my corporate job, it was important with, the pandemic and everything, for me to have a little more flexibility in my life. But also, I'm really passionate. I think getting the opportunity to do something like this as your job is not very common. And I don't get Sunday scaries anymore. I mean, I wake up every day and I'm like, wow, this is really cool. I love what I do.
Yeah.
So if the students weren't getting success, that would be a total disappointment for me, because this is something that I'm really putting a lot of energy and passion into right now. So it's really important to me that students are achieving milestones within a certain time frame.
Yeah. And it sounds to me that one of the things that is different about the support that you offer is bringing in those those successful previous students, as opposed to having a group where everyone is learning, which has its advantages as well, because people are going through it together and able to help people past their sticking points. But then having on top of that people who are experts in what they do. So if everyone is, confused about something, having a person in there that's the go-to, like for instance, your graphic design specialist, to say what's wrong with my design, what's not clicking, what's not attracting people to it, is a good thing, which, in which I know I don't always see in some of the groups that come with courses.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, of course, there are a lot of newer people contributing. And honestly, the students that have had the most success, I knew who they were when they joined the course because they were just so vocal. I think when someone is really trying hard and you're a course owner, you can kind of know who they are because they're posting a lot and they're showing up to the events and they're trying to get as much as they can from you in the course. And that's great because they are going to give it their all.
Yeah.
I know there have been courses myself that I signed up for that it just wasn't the right time of my life and I couldn't give it my all. But when I am really focused on it, I do try to become, using all the benefits and try to be that student that everyone is interacting with, because then you'll get a little bit more out of the experience. Yeah. But I really do feel that our Etsy course is something that can help handmade sellers, new sellers get on the right path. And just because we focus on that profit first, the personal finance piece of it, that also sort of sets us apart because we know that people are doing this for a side hustle and that's what they're looking for.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned handmade sellers because I don't want them to feel left out in this. And one of the things I've had some sellers on the podcast who were handmade sellers and then transitioned, or I shouldn't say transitioned because they didn't stop the handmade part of their business, but expanded into printables as well. Do you teach strategies for, like, let's say someone who crochets, how to create digital patterns? Do you teach those types of what's the word I'm thinking of, like techniques or how to do that?
I think for the handmade sellers, they're really coming for the business side of it and understanding seasonal demand, keyword research, how to use eRank in a more intermediate sort of advanced way. And then also some of them just want to add a printables line to their existing shop too. Yeah. So we've had a lot of handmade sellers that said, hey, I just want something that, maybe their product is very seasonal. And they just said, oh, I want something that I can sell year round that can kind of buffer some of the slower months for me. Yeah. And that's what they're looking for. But they're not necessarily as interested in, oh, how do I use Canva to make my own printable in some cases. Okay. So really the course it's kind of I would say it's a mammoth of the course. We spend the most time trying to take things out so it's less overwhelming and just kind of to the point. And then extra things are provided in the VIP group that we mentioned. Okay. So that once you do get through the main course material, you can sort of choose your own adventure after that. Because we know, when things are too long, people get a little overwhelmed. So we focus on keeping them focused and then they can add to their knowledge base as they go.
About how much time would you recommend one dedicate to getting all the way through?
I think if you are going to do it maybe for 3 to 4 hours a week for a month, 30 days is, I think you'll get through the material in the first month. Okay. And then you can choose to kind of hang around if you do like it. And we see most people end up liking it. And love printables and think this is a creative thing to do when they do have free time. And hey, if it makes money too, that's great. And I would say that's a good time frame. But then, we have some other students that the ones that went full time with it, they're spending 15, 20 hours a week in their first couple months. And that's when they're seeing the true success. But this is not a kind of quit your job full time on Etsy thing. This is a side hustle based approach. And everything that we teach and everything we do is based on trying to create the most passive business possible, because that's what Cody and I wanted to do with this whole financial independence, retire early thing. Yeah. It's not leave your job so that you can work all day on your computer. It's leave your job so that you can, I was thinking I was going to travel and do all these things. Now having a kid, I realize what's more realistic about what I'm going to do during my day. But it's not so I can sit on my computer all day. Yeah. So we do teach philosophies like we don't really recommend doing custom orders. We let our students know what those are. and that you can make more when you do them, but it also is going to be less passive for you. And I usually make the trade-off of less money, but more flexibility in my personal life. But, every seller has their own journey. And if it was back in 2016 when I was trying to pay off all that debt, you betcha I would do custom orders. But right now in my life, that's not something that I'm choosing to accommodate.
Yeah. Thank you for being very realistic about your approach and what people can expect based on what they put in and time constraints. Because honestly, yes, life is, the reality is everybody has something going on, and most people, who are working, have to be realistic about how much time they can commit to getting through a course and implementing what they're learning and giving it time to actually see the results. So I like that you emphasize this, that you and Cody come from a side hustle perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like we said, the things that we're teaching, someone could take it to the point. We have had students that do. I mean, one of our most successful students, Rachel from Money Hacking Mama, she has made, I think, $150,000 in a year on Etsy or something crazy like that.
Wow.
But, from our perspective, it's absolutely a side hustle.
Yeah.
And if anyone is frustrated with how much time they have, I mean, I'm still in that thick of it too. I have conversations with my husband all the time of like, oh, I love online business. I want to spend, hours on my Etsy shop. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I'm just not in the season of my life where I can do that. So I really do relate. And it's still frustrating for me too. But at the same time, I really appreciate and I'm grateful for my family and health and all things. But sometimes my own ambition just gets ahead of me and then I get like frustrated and shut down. So we like to focus on small wins every week, and consistent behaviors over time really do add up.
Nice. Now let's talk about you, Julie, and what running your business day to day looks like. Just to give people a glimpse of into that. How do you manage your time between being a part of Gold City Ventures, also having an Etsy shop, making time to create, and of course, family time too?
So I think the beautiful thing about the printables business is that I only have to focus on that maybe 1 or 2 months out of the year. Where I am now, having a shop that was started back and really was focusing on building printables, I think in 2017 is when I really started going with that. So at this point, I just have to do that maintenance work and answer customer messages, which I haven't gotten any customer messages in the last month. But sometimes I get a bunch. I have a product that's a Google template and it sells really well, but people just cannot figure it out. And I don't blame them. I mean, it's not the easiest to use, but it's a free program that a lot of people have, which is why I offer it. But when I get those messages, I'm like, even though it's the same question, so I have a standard response, but I haven't gotten a lot of those in a while. But I really don't spend that much time on my shop once I kind of got over the hump of making the products. And then from the perspective of having a course, I was very lucky to start with a business partner. And I think a lot of people, when they're starting a business, they do it all by themselves. And that's just really difficult when you're doing anything by yourself. Kudos to those of you that are riding solo right now in your business. Having a business partner, we divide all of the work by 2, and then having one that's in a different season of life, we just have different availability. And that makes a big difference. And it's kind of fun. It makes me not want to give up. Because I have someone to bounce ideas off of. And now that the team has grown, we can chat with each other and it just makes it a lot more fun. Like, for example, Sasha, who you had on, she hosts members meetups and she does a lot of freelancing work for us. She's our content manager. Angie, who you had on, she just launched a podcast with this other former student, Michelle. Michelle's a OneNote expert. Angie's a branding expert. And they're like doing a podcast for members for Gold City Ventures. And I listen to their stuff and I'm like, oh, wow, this is so cool. But I don't actually have to physically be pushing all the buttons anymore because we have the budget to hire people and kind of make it a bigger thing than just me or Cody. So having a business partner, and once you get the ball rolling, just investing in help and investing in other people's talents. Yes, there's less profit for you personally, but that will help you grow faster, and you'll be able to just scale faster. And I'm sure in an Etsy shop, I mean, the same thing could be like hiring an assistant or finding a freelancer that can help you do some, if you have any administrative tasks or whatever, making those early hires and being really strategic about what you have them work on and making sure that it's something that contributes to the growth of the business and not just is like busy work. Although there's something to be said about saving time, but that kind of philosophy has really helped me free up my time. So for example, today I have not worked on the business until tonight when we recorded this. And I didn't do Etsy shop. I didn't do Gold City Ventures. I just was with my daughter all day. So that's kind of my daily schedule now.
Yeah. Julie, you said so many things. I'm furiously making notes about things I need to come back and ask you about. Because first of all, Angie and Michelle, and let me just give some background for, if you listen to the podcast, you probably heard my interview with Angie, which was, I want to say it was episode 338 or 37. I will have a link to it. Episode 336. I will link to it in the show notes for this episode. Angie has a course about branding or rebranding your Etsy shop. And Michelle, you're going to hear her episode coming up in a few weeks. And she also has a course on OneNote, and we're going to talk all about that. It's something else completely, and that blew my mind to what she's doing. But Julie, you mentioned that they have a podcast. What's their podcast?
We just started it. It's called the Gold City Ventures podcast, but
it's
the two of them
for Gold City Ventures. Okay.
Yes, but only for members. It's not public.
I see. Okay.
And it's really, when I mentioned that, we have a lot of students in the group, we are a happy, friendly community, and it's not, there's nothing, there's some helpful Facebook groups for Etsy sellers, but sometimes those can get a little bit much or
unwieldy,
a little repetitive. So this group is, I love all the students that have been in the course, and we wanted to create something special for them. And Angie and Michelle are experts in their own rights, and they have thousands of sales on Etsy, and they have their own ways of kind of doing things and a lot of information to share. But we wanted to do it in a way that, they can really talk in depth, and that's something that our members and students really want to hear in the details of everything that you wouldn't necessarily put on a public podcast that would go out to, thousands of people, 100,000 people.
Right.
So, so they just launched that, and we're really excited about it. And I guess, when we're talking about Gold City Ventures, what makes us stand out? I mentioned that we have the team, but I guess another thing is that Cody and I, we have, between the two of us, we've done 10 different online businesses. We've been podcasters. Cody had a physical product selling disc golf. I don't know if anyone's played that game, but he's kind of done that whole thing, like selling on Amazon, all that. He's done freelancing. I've done blogging. I still make tens of thousands of dollars from my blog, Millennial Boss. We're kind of like, we have this online course. We're the jack of all trades when it comes to online business. And we like focusing on Etsy, but then every once in a while, we want to just bring in these outside things. And the students that have been with us for a long time that we know, we will give them opportunities to kind of continue along with us. And that's why Angie and Sasha and Michelle and people, they took our sort of incubator where we helped them create their own digital products. And then from there came their courses. And we have other students that we're now kind of doing the same thing with. And it's a way for us to scratch our itch because we just love everything online business. And we think, for us, that not selling on Etsy wasn't necessarily the thing that got us where we're going. Like I mentioned, I had a very successful blog. I still do. That contributes significant amount of revenue. Cody was a freelancer, and he was making also like tens of thousands of dollars from freelancing for these online entrepreneurs. Our goal is to help people succeed in online business, period. And we do kind of help people. We start with the Etsy printables, and that's kind of where they learn the bread and butter. But then we have these other ways that they can kind of get their online business going after they start doing that. And I think a good milestone for that is hitting 100 sales. That's when we kind of start introducing these other things.
So there's a whole machine behind the course, and I shouldn't say machine, like a whole world. It opens up a whole new world to the people who are on the inside. I love that. You also mentioned that Sasha hosts meetups. Are these in-person meetups or like Zoom meetups?
They're in person. Well, not in person, like physical, I guess. And this is me, 2020 me, like nothing is in person anymore. It's all virtual.
Okay.
And you can turn, I guess what is in person about it is you can turn your camera on. So
Okay.
sometimes I would hope that everyone turns their camera on because for me, meeting Cody and people like him, and I think what you've been able to do through your podcast, I'm sure you're getting to meet all these other people that are on their way. And even though right now we may be in the place we are, maybe 3 months from now a cool opportunity comes my way that I think of you and I'm like, oh, let's do this together or this or that. Those type of connections can never happen if you're just hiding behind your computer screen doing it yourself.
Yeah.
And we were thinking a lot about that and like, oh well, why have we reached success? And it's really because we met other people and we didn't give up because we met other people too.
Yeah.
So we wanted to foster that for students. So Sasha kind of turns on her camera and then anyone can come and chat with her. And of course, she's a wealth of knowledge and just super passionate about Etsy and a very seasoned seller, but also just providing that space for students to hang out. And then Angie and Michelle actually met each other through our course and our different programs. They've taken a couple of our courses, I think, and they became friends. And then now they're co-hosting this podcast together. And I think not only are they going to be more incentivized for their online business journey, but it's probably more fun. And you never know like what collaborations or connections will kind of come from their friendship there. So we're trying to foster that within our community as well.
Yeah. I'm having FOMO because I feel like I've met all these ladies and now you, and I'm still on the outside.
But well, you can come like hang out with us. It's really like a nice group of people. And
yeah.
I mean, yes, like I'm the one going on the podcast, but really once you're in the whole thing, you're going to meet a lot of other people like Kevin and Jenny. I want to give them credit, like Jenny Marshall and Kevin Jones. I think Sasha actually mentioned Kevin now that I think of it on the podcast. They're just such helpful, nice people. And they've been around since the beginning. We just have a great team. Can't mention them all now, but I really appreciate that. And they really are genuinely invested in helping other people succeed.
Absolutely. And if you're listening to this and you want to know more about the ePrintables course, about everything that Gold City Ventures is doing, I'm going to have a link to Gold City Ventures website that has all the information so you can get connected to this community and just learn more about how you can get involved and grow as an Etsy seller. Julie, what advice or what last piece of, advice would you have for that person who is listening right now and is just feeling kind of stuck where they are? What would you say to that person to motivate them to maybe just hang in there?
I think it takes that spark, and we all have our ups and downs. I mean, it's a roller coaster selling on Etsy or doing any sort of online business. So I totally can relate to that. And I still struggle with it today because I want to be a certain spot. And, even though I'm doing well or whatever, I kind of put myself up to too high of standards. So I can relate to that. But I think if you want to change your direction or you want to achieve more success with online business, you have to put yourself in the room with other people that are going to help you, give you support, things like that. So whether it's a community like Gold City Ventures or another community, just trying to see if meeting other people and putting yourself in that room can spark some creativity in you, get things flowing. I think that's a helpful thing for people. And ePrintables is the course that is the gateway in our world of how to kind of get in on that. I also should mention this year, we are doing this new thing with joint ventures. So there are some people, handmade sellers, they just don't have an interest in creating printables, but they are curious about some of the online business stuff that Cody and I do and that we sort of offer. So this year we're offering these joint ventures where if someone wants to make a digital product out of their knowledge, like let's say that you mentioned the crochet seller or you make these awesome like handmade signs, we can help you figure out how to turn that into a digital product where you can teach other people how to do it and turn it potentially into an online business, kind of like the world of Gold City Ventures. Now, Gold City Ventures has gotten pretty big, but you can turn it into a smaller, digital product and grow that over time. So if anyone is interested in just the joint venture side, they can contact us about that as well.
Wonderful. Okay. Now, this might be a tricky question for you, just being so connected to so many Etsy sellers. But one of the things I ask my guests is if they have an Etsy shop shout out. Now, I know you probably know hundreds of Etsy sellers and you'll probably feel bad not mentioning everyone, but are there any in particular, and no limits, that you would like to give a special shout out right now?
I think I don't think she has an Etsy shop anymore, but Laura of I Heart Planners was someone that I met at a conference. Oh, yeah. And I think having that conversation with her was a pivotal moment in my, whatever this is, career, whatever you call my new job now. But I think I'd like to give her a shout out because she was very friendly to me. So I went to a conference completely by myself back in the day. I think it was maybe 2016, 2017. And I was at the taco food truck line at lunch and had no one to talk to. And I just struck up that awkward conversation with her, like, what are you going to order? And she told me all about her printables business and her planner business and all that. And it just really inspired me. And then she came on our podcast, and that was really the start of all this stuff. So you really don't know if one conversation is going to change your life, I guess.
Seriously,
at a taco truck. But I'll just give her a shout out because I think that's really cool. And it just shows that in this particular space, I don't feel like we're that competitive of a community in that everyone is just so nice. And I mean, in my space, at least, we all want each other to succeed. Trust me, there's more than enough ideas. Like we get a million emails from people saying, I can't think of a new idea, or it's oversaturated. And then those same people, maybe they'll start the course 2 years later and they'll make a lot of sales and they're like, oh, I wish I, didn't talk myself out of it at the beginning. But that's something that we all say to ourselves when we start any side hustle. And I'm telling you, as someone that I've shared my shop, and everyone that has taken my course or heard me on podcasts, they go to the Swag Elephant, they look at it, they get my product ideas. There's always more ideas. And you can do well. And it's just a kind of a mindset thing that you need to work on too, beyond just the hard skills. So thanks to Laura for helping me with that.
Oh, well, thank you, Laura. Julie, what's the best way folks can either connect with you, or where do you want people to go to learn more or get more information?
Definitely goldcityventures.com is the hub for learning more about what we offer and the Printables course, or if you do want to contact us, if you have a joint venture idea, like turning your skill into a digital product, because that's the new thing that we're really excited about. But that's where I tell people to go. I do have an Instagram. It's Millennial Boss, 2 L's, 2 N's. But I am not an Instagrammer. And I think I will say this, the Gold City Ventures approach to success is not a social media approach. So if anyone doesn't want to be doing TikTok or Instagram or all the things, that is totally fine, because most of our sellers don't. We personally don't use that as a key sales channel. Now, if you do, and we have some kind of partners that we bring in, like third parties, to kind of give webinars and trainings on that, but you can do really well. But we are focused on a search engine optimization, search volume kind of data approach, and you don't necessarily need that. And that is a key of why this is so passive, because I find social media to be a lot. But I do post and I share like story highlights and stuff on my Instagram, Millennial Boss.
Julie, if we had our cameras on right now, you would see me almost jumping up, because I actually had a note to ask you about social media, but then I was like, oh, the conversation is going long and I want to respect Julie's time. She has a young kid and all that. But I am so glad you addressed your approach to social media, because it really was something I wanted to ask you about, and what your approach and your take on that was. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because yes, sometimes I feel like a lot of us as sellers put a lot of stake into social media and hope and pray and wish that that's going to be what gets us to where we want to end up financially. And the grind just doesn't always work for everyone. So I'm glad to know that your strategy is one that you guys teach can give people relief from social media if that's what they want. I know there are people who really enjoy it, but also knowing that there's another way to still find success without necessarily having to rely on it is encouraging to me, and I hope it's encouraging to someone else who is kind of struggling with that right now.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, we've, particularly at the beginning of the pandemic, we had someone that she had a garden planner that she sold, and she put it on TikTok and made like 400 sales or something. But most people, they're not doing TikToks, they're not doing Instagrams, and it's just not our approach.
Yeah.
And even for myself, at the beginning of this year, I said, you know what? It's the year I'm going to figure out how to make reels. If you go on my Instagram, you'll see these reels, and then you'll see how embarrassing I am and how cringy I am making reels. And I'm embarrassed for anyone to look at them now. But it's just not going to be, it's not going to be my style of success. And I've been able to grow Gold City Ventures and all these things without the need to do social media.
Yeah. Congratulations on that. Julie, thank you so much for, first of all, making the time to come and be on the podcast to share about what Gold City Ventures is doing and your course also. And thank you for just being willing to share your knowledge with my audience, and not just them, but also with the students that come through your course. It sounds like you guys really pour yourselves into what you do, and I think that makes a difference, as evidenced by the success stories. So I appreciate you taking this time out, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You are most welcome. I will have links to everywhere that you can connect with Julie. Well, Gold City Ventures and on Instagram. It's, again, the website is goldcityventures.com. Go get on her mailing list and get in the loop of what's going on. There's more information there also about the ePrintables course. And I thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. I will be back with another one next week.